Hello, everyone. It's Kris here at Verve. We've just kicked off the panel session for today's edition of Atlassian Scotland. We'll just give people a few minutes to join and then we'll kick off as planned. How's everyone doing in the meantime? I think there was a mention of some horrible weather, but I'm not sure which region that was from.
I'm in Fife and it's horrible weather.
Oh, dear.
It's not too bad in York. It's cloudy, but it's not raining yet.
Very good. I'm down in England myself, and it's been grey and grey all day.
Yeah, it feels like it doesn't get light.
I'm just the other side of the Forth Road Bridge from Lorraine, and it can only be described as biblical.
Jonathan, are you moving into Tier 4?
Yes.
I thought that. We've just escaped it. We're remaining in Tier 3.
Yes. Now
I
we're
don't know for how
Tier 4.
long.
Lots of discussions about how are we actually going to get shopping. Where are we getting it from?
Mm-hmm.
Very good. So I think we have about half of the attendees having joined so far. So we're just going to wait a little bit longer for everyone to come in, and then kick off in about a minute or two.
Well, it's quite telling. When the first lockdown was around, nobody could get toilet paper.
Yep.
My Newcastle colleagues yesterday, and no one can get tonic water. So people are drinking more gin.
That's a challenge.
Yes. She can't get tonic water anywhere.
Oh dear.
Going to reinforce some stereotypes there, I think.
Yeah.
Very good. So for everyone who's just tuned in, we're just about to kick off our session, our new session, our panel session of the Atlassian Scotland 2020 webinar series. We're just waiting for the remaining attendees to join, and we should be good to start in about a minute. Okay, I think we're good to go. So let's kick off now. This webinar is obviously being recorded, so everyone who has signed up for it will receive a recording anyway. As a formal kickoff, this is going to be the fourth and the final session of our Atlassian Scotland 2020 webinar series. So Atlassian Scotland is an event that Verve has started to try and promote the Atlassian ecosystem in Scotland, but also to bring together practitioners from all kinds of related fields, practitioners who might have already used these tools or other similar collaboration and productivity tools to discuss various topics that are of interest in the industry. This session is a panel session, and the focus of this session is how can IT create value at speed? Specifically IT teams. So the discussion will focus on the future of IT and how to break down silos, how to adapt quickly, how to be more agile. And we'll touch on how IT teams can embrace more modern ways of working, for example, agile and DevOps. And our esteemed panel will be focused on specifically the theme of ITSM, which has been the theme for the Atlassian in Scotland 2020 series. So rather than specific tools, we'll encourage you to discuss and the frameworks, the processes, the experience that you've had with using them, and we'll try and keep it tooling agnostic. But do feel free to use examples of Atlassian software and how it has added value to your ITSM approach. We'd love that discussion to be, as dynamic as possible. So to kick off, a little bit of housekeeping first. So there's a very simple order of events here. We'll start with a little bit of introductions from everyone involved in the panel. We'll follow that up with the actual panel discussion with a number of questions that we have prepared for the occasion. And then after that, we'll do a bit of a Q&A session. For everyone who is attending this webinar, please feel free to go to the Q&A facility that is available as part of the Zoom application. So you should see that in the button somewhere in the top or bottom bar of the application. Feel free to click that button and submit your questions as we go. The panelists will have the option of answering your question as and when it comes in via that window, the Q&A window. Otherwise, your question might be answered live as we go through them at the end of the panel discussion. And so without further ado, I think that's it in terms of housekeeping. We'll kick off with a little bit of intros from everyone. So first off, I'll kick off by introducing myself. I'm going to be hosting the panel discussion today. My name is Kris. I'm currently head of operations at Verve. I come from a technical consulting background, and as such, I've cut my teeth on implementing various types of practices and tooling for our customers across ITSM, Agile, DevOps. So that's my background here. Moving on to Lorraine.
Hi there, good afternoon everyone. I'm Lorraine Brown, and my current role is a solution support leader at Capita Consulting. And I am responsible for the IT service delivery of the support service within Capita Consulting. So we put in the solutions, we follow that up with our service delivery, and we've got clients like BBC, NHS, IUK. So we've got some big clients. I started off many years ago in IT on the tools. I was a network and systems engineer, and I moved into management more years than I care to mention at the moment. So yeah, been doing IT service management for a while now.
Perfect, thanks Lorraine. Over to Claire.
Hi everyone, my name's Claire Agutter. I'm the director at ITSM Zone, which you can see there. We are an e-learning organisation, and we offer training in all things service management, so ITIL, DevOps, Agile, BRM, and so on and so forth. We share a lot of content ourselves, so if you are finding you've got time to watch a bit more online content this year, you can check out our YouTube channel as well, which is the ITSM Crowd.
Fantastic, thanks Claire. And moving over to Jonathan.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, my name's Jonathan Boyd. I've been in the IT and service management industry for around 20 years now. Currently working to support eMite, which is a dashboarding solution across EMEA. So I look after the solutions consultants. I've spent much of my career with IT service management solutions and software solutions. And over the last kind of period, I've been focusing on things like CBRM and co-authoring digital capabilities management.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Jonathan. So that's ourselves, that's our panel. Thank you very much again, everyone, for making the time to join us today for this discussion. And I think without further ado, we'll just kick off with the panel discussion itself. As a reminder to everyone, I'll present a question for the panel to answer, and then we'll take some answers from the panel and then move on to the next question in sequence. So the first question here, and this question is from a sort of self-service and self-help category. We thought it might be useful just kind of starting off the discussion with a bit of a human touch because of COVID. Let's be honest about it, because times have changed and they have changed rapidly, and self-service and self-help, they've never been more relevant than they are now, where everything has moved to working remotely, to working from home, to having increased demand on your capacity for self-service. And as such, this question will kind of try and tackle that from that perspective as well. So we have seen a huge drive to achieve this kind of shift left, having improved performance and cost savings on the service management front. But there is also evidence that this is not actually beneficial to our customers. So what do you think are the challenges that are facing the teams that are implementing self-help and self-service, especially in these difficult times? How about we start with you, Claire?
So we prepped for this panel a few weeks ago, and this question came up and we were talking about who wanted to answer. And I just stuck my hand straight up for this one because it pressed my rage buttons. And I think so many of us this year will have experienced the frustration of needing something from a brand or an organization and getting trapped in some horrific self-service system where a nice voice explains to you that, well, these are very busy times, and you think that might have been true in March, but now that we're in November, you should understand your new patterns of demand and patterns of business activity. And whilst as service providers, we do all scramble behind the scenes to make things work, customers don't care that your staff are working from home or that things are challenging. They want to be able to access the information and the service that they need. And the kind of the challenge with self-service is summed up in this question, because it talks about improved performance and cost savings. And the question that service providers have to ask themselves is, improved performance for who? Are we trying to cut the number of calls that come into our service desk and we're trying to change the statistics there? Or are we talking about improved user experience and customer experience? Where are we trying to cut costs? Because, if we have a customer who goes through a website FAQ section, then goes through some kind of automated process, then rings us and has to speak to somebody at the end of all of that, the cost from the customer's perspective there in terms of time is actually huge. So, an example I had recently was trying to find something to book on a website, got told to ring the helpline, rung the helpline, the automated message said, oh, you could probably find your answers on our website. Have you tried there? And I think, yes, I have. You told me to call. So the challenges are understanding why we're doing this and what do our customers actually want, because some organizations have customers who very much appreciate this. More technical people are quite often much more willing to go through self-service options, to try things themselves. There's a lot of evidence that the younger generations as well are much happier interacting with chatbots and artificial intelligence. They don't necessarily want to ring a help desk either. So being clear about why we're doing it, what do our customers want? And it's only really at that point that we start to think about the technology, because it's quite often people think, oh, we can just put a tool in and we can do self-help. But the service management perspective is, why are we doing it? Who is the value for? Have we got the knowledge management in order to be able to do this? What do the value streams look like? What are the simple things that we can route through self-service? What can we enable shift left for? How do we identify the complex things that actually need to come to a human being, a human agent? And it's only when we've put all of those pieces together that we can start to think about the technology. So the challenges are huge, but a lot of them can be resolved with some clarity. And if your drive is cost cutting, you might have to accept that there's going to be a drop off in customer experience. If you're doing it because there's evidence that your customers actually want this, you will see that improvement, but you might have to invest in order to get that up and running. So this is where the challenge is. And quite often people do think it's a technology thing. It's not. It's a service management thing. What are we trying to do and why?
Yep, that's a very salient point about the cost to the customer there, Claire. Completely agree, and I could see Lorraine nodding her head and smiling throughout. Are you agreeing or disagreeing, Lorraine?
Oh, definitely agreeing. I've never heard a customer say, I don't want to speak to a person, let me use self. Ever. It's like what Claire's saying, the challenge is huge. But also we're talking nowadays about rapid service delivery, rapid delivery and everything, knowledge base. How do you keep your knowledge base up with that rapid delivery? Because that self-service will just have to keep, being updated. And also because people are used to going online, buying things right away, getting them delivered, ordering things, interacting really quickly. Nobody's want to look through frequently asked questions. Nobody's wanting to go through and take that time. They want answers like this, and it's consumer demand now. And consumer demand, in my experience, they don't want self-service. They want rapid turnaround. They want to speak to someone. So yeah, I completely agree with Claire, and I understand her rage button. I had it too.
Yep, absolutely. In terms of just to very quickly build on that point, so especially in terms of the customer interaction, have you seen a shift towards a more face-to-face interaction, so using virtual tools like chat or even video or phone calls, as opposed to using systems like service desks?
I have to admit, I like live chat, because although I'm not face-to-face with someone, the live chat systems that I have used, it's popped up, hello, would you like to chat? And you're chatting away right away. And even if it is a bot, I still feel like I'm getting attention, you know, rather than just looking through the frequently asked questions. So for me, going on to sites, I've seen an increase in live chat.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think the other trend that I see as well, which is kind of more on the technology side, is it's almost skipping this question and saying, how do we stop things affecting customers in the first place? So things like AI ops, observability, you know, really smart event management and monitoring. That's a place where the investment that you make in the technology can really improve the customer experience, because they never even have to find out that something's gone wrong. They never have to interact with you. So then your support channels are reserved for the genuine questions, you know, the how do I's, the I need help, I want something different. And again, that's using technology to enhance the customer experience, but you're not perhaps pushing something on your customers that they don't really want.
Mm-hmm. Yep, completely agree with that. Just a very quick reminder to everyone joining this panel discussion today. If you do have any questions for our panelists or for ourselves that you would like answered, please don't hesitate to use the Q&A facility. We would love to see some questions coming through. With that in mind, let's move on to the next point on our discussion. And this one is from a slightly different theme. So this one is around the tools, and especially tools which are easy to use and enable people to collaborate. So we've spoken just then about tools and about how much they help, but also how much they sometimes don't. And building on that theme, what sorts of tools and frameworks do you believe that are key to your success and enable your teams to collaborate well and outperform the expected norms? And why don't we go with Jonathan for this one first?
Sure. I think one of the kind of key things, certainly around the question itself, is collaboration is the key to being able to outperform norms. And the whole point of collaboration isn't the ability to just simply provide a tool set. It's about getting the right people to be either virtually or physically in the same room. So I think any tools that will enable your teams to work together, and that's where what I tend to call orchestrated serendipity, where you've got the right people at the right time talking about the right things. That's where you're going to actually get true innovation. That's where new ideas are going to come from. People who are involved in those types of collaboration are vitally important. I remember working with a digital agency a little while ago, and they were doing work for one of the aviation businesses. And it was all around the kind of process of what happened kind of airside. So all the baggage, everything from when you leave your baggage to you pick it back up again. And all of the kind of workshops, etc., that they went through with all of the leadership and the management around what this process should be, how it should work, something didn't quite add up. And it wasn't until they actually went on the tarmac and watched what was going on to realize that people's own experience had changed the process, because the kind of documented process, if you like, the governed process, wasn't actually working. So what they did was they had changed it. So they did different things that just made it easier and quicker to actually get that whole process to work. And with the end of that, the report back was basically to let them know that actually what was going on was entirely different. The people who knew best what was really going on in terms of solving those challenges and improving the performance of the service that they were delivering are often omitted from the workshops and the discussions where they should really be included. So for me, I think it's not so much just about which tools work. I mean, we and eMight, we use the Atlassian suite. So we've got documentation in Confluence, we're using Jira and Service Desk, and using that all to pull all of the different parts of our organization together. The real main point to think about is more around what is the workflow? What do you want those tools to actually do? Who do you want to get to bring together, and why? And I think when you have that and you get it right, that's when you'll start to see that things are improving faster.
So what you're suggesting, Jonathan, is start looking at the process first. And
absolutely. You can't just click an exe file and all the problems go away. It doesn't work.
No.
You really have to look internally. I've tried.
I've been wrong for so long.
Yep, completely agree. Claire, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and I think I try and resist every panel turning into a COVID panel, but everything that we discuss this year, we look at through the lens of 2020. And one of the things that has had to happen is a very rapid shift to virtual collaboration. And if we were asking this question last year, we could have had quite a theoretical discussion about collaboration in virtual teams, whereas now it's become the reality. And there is a real management responsibility here, which is to help teams to create new ways of working, to monitor where the discussions are happening and see if people are being excluded, check that the tone is correct. You know, where are we having our informal chat? Where is the formal chat? Do people understand how to communicate in a new language? So that the tools and the frameworks, to a certain extent, I would support. I think it's Rob England that says, you know, let the team choose the tools. So allow your teams to select the tools that they want to work with, whether that is the Atlassian suite, you know, whether it's things like Slack, it's Microsoft Teams. Let the teams choose the tools that will work for them, rather than trying to force something down into your organization. But also we have to learn new behaviors. We have to understand what this looks like, what's normal for us as an organization. I did another webinar and there was a lady from a design company, and she said for them, you know, cameras on is normal. If somebody joins a call and they don't have the camera on, she worries about them and wonders what might be wrong. My organization, cameras off is normal. You know, we put the cameras on every now and then, but we are normally cameras off. But these aren't things that we know how to do. There's reams and reams of knowledge available about how to run a face-to-face meeting, how to communicate, look at body language, what are people's signals telling us. We don't have the understanding of how to do this. So it is a learning curve, and everybody's got to kind of contribute to that. And the tools are a part of it, but it's also a management responsibility to monitor the teams and make sure that those conversations are still taking place.
I couldn't agree more. Sorry, can I just add something on to that, Kris? I couldn't agree more. What we've started doing within our organisation, we noticed what we all miss is the banter that you get in the office, you know. So we've started coffee chats, and what we do is we mix up the teams every week. So it's not my team, I go into a completely different area, and we facilitate it by, we're not allowed to talk about work, we're allowed to introduce ourselves, and we have a topic. And what the first topic was, what's something that's maybe witty or something that's strange or something that you've achieved in lockdown. And the other ones have been, if you want to do one thing in life you've always wanted to do and you just kept putting it off, but after lockdown you're going to do it, what is it going to be? And what we found in our organisation is after these 1 hour chats, we do them once a week, everyone feels refreshed. Almost like, you know, you've just gone into the kitchen, you've met someone new within the office, not within your team, and you've all learnt something about each other. So you're right, it's just using the tools, but changing how you use them. We would never have thought about doing a virtual coffee chat like that, you know, previously.
Yep, that's very interesting, and that actually leads us very conveniently to the next question, because we're moving from this view of the tools to the view of people themselves. So the next question is from the category of organizational agility. And that has been a massive buzzword and trend over the past few years now. So specifically here, we're interested in how all companies now need to rapidly change to drive us in this marketplace, the ITSM marketplace especially. I'm thinking about improving service value and delivery within this changing marketplace. What do you think are the key factors that we should have in place to be able to change at speed? Why don't we go with Lorraine first for this one?
Of course, the drivers are the consumer, and that's driving us all. But it's bringing in things like DevOps, agile, things like that, closer collaboration with teams. As I say, we work in the service delivery and the support service delivery, and within my teams, I've got developers, I've got DevOps, I've got QA, service desk analysts, change release manager. It's a real collaborative team, and even just doing rapid changes for a little bit on the client side. We're running pipelines. It's all automated, but then organizations are really needing to spin up cloud services so they could spin up environments, make changes and drive that rapid delivery through. So it's a mixture like everything else. It's your tools, and you've got your cloud technologies now. It's your DevOps capability, it's your agile framework. So everything again has to come together, because the drivers are the consumer, and there's never been a bigger time now than having user researchers, user experience. The companies are all bringing that in right at the start to map the user journey, taking that, going into the design, and then the build, and then the delivery, and then the support. So everything's become a much more holistic approach now, to getting that rapid change in the marketplace. But that's what we're talking about with self-service. You've got that rapid delivery, then you have to have the rapid support, to back that up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So we're talking both about holistic approaches, but also integrating approaches together successfully to create this sort of organization-wide umbrella. What's your take on that, Jonathan?
I think there's a lot of talk just now around, ITIL and DevOps and Agile, and how do they all work together, and how do you get them to integrate? And I think they all come from a very similar background. They're all devised around the kind of service provider model, whether that is developing software and selling it to an external customer, developing services and selling those to an external customer. But I think there's more paradigms really in what IT is. And I think that kind of bleeds into things like internal IT, because internal IT is not selling to external customers. They're internal. So their customers are internal parts of the same organization. And it's an interesting point, because everybody's also talking about value just now. And that can take many different terms or definitions for different people. What's valuable to me today may change over time, and it may be very different to what's valuable to you, to Lorraine, to Claire, and to anybody else. So it's constantly moving and changing, and the ITSM world tends to view value as we've delivered our service to the agreements and the SLAs, etc., that we've set aside. You're now going to go and use it, and you're going to create value from your perspective, and call it co-creation. But the problem is that's not really the same as collaboration. Again, it's two separate parties kind of working in alignment. The challenge here is that if you're internal, there is only one organization, there's no separate entities. So collaboration has to take a different view, value takes a different view, and it's about looking at benefits. And I think what we've said here is absolutely spot on. It's about a holistic approach. And when you start to look at the whole organization, you have to be able to measure the benefits at that whole organizational level. I mean, some of the earlier conversation where we're talking about shift left, we can see from the evidence that it's not just the effort that's shifting left when your customers have to go and look at frequently asked questions. It's also the cost, because that's taking them away from their job. Mm-hmm. So I think, my viewpoint on this is, a lot of the frameworks that we use and we cling to because that's all we've been told for 30 years or more, we have to start also thinking whether or not they are applicable to a situation that we actually have. So it's not just about knowing and applying them, It's about knowing when to apply them and when not to. I think there's a quote out there. It's not just about knowing things. It's not just about knowledge, but nowadays it's actually about knowing what to ignore because there's just so much knowledge.
Yep, that's a very salient point, and I think it kind of leads to another question that I wanted to ask, which is tangentially related, but it's really flipping it on its head. So when we're talking about integrating, and when we're talking about having to interface with all these different practices, what is it that actually needs to change outside of the IT department, whether it's an internal IT or external IT department, to support IT creating that value at speed? Why don't we get Claire to feed in on that?
I think this question represents a fundamental error in our thinking now, which is that IT is something that happens in a box in the IT department or in a supplier. If we are serious about IT being a strategic capability, something that is embedded in every single business process, it needs to come out of the box. And one of the kind of the big paradigms that we need to throw away, in my opinion, is this idea that you've got IT and the business. If IT is the business, and again, I think this year we're all pretty much finding out that actually, yes, it is, that needs to run right through the whole organisation. It's not a case of saying, okay, you know, wouldn't it be nice to have a website? IT, off you go, do that for us. It's understanding if we're building a website, that includes sales, marketing, brand, customer service, logistics in the background, and technology is just a small part of what enables this to happen. So the first thing that needs to change is the idea that the IT department is the be all and end all, because that's where we get these cultural problems, like, you know, oh, IT is the department of no, they keep saying I can't have what I want. This concept of shadow IT, where anything that's been bought by the business is suddenly wrong because it's not been sanctioned by the IT department. So we need to get rid of that viewpoint and start to think about, how is IT a part of every area of the business, every department? You know, if marketing are using different online tools, if they're doing online advertising, they've got analytics campaigns going on, if they are doing that, what do they need from the IT department in order to make that work? Because you read some of these articles, it's kind of like DevOps turns into no ops, and actually it doesn't. The fact that IT also lives in the business doesn't mean there is no role for an IT department or for service management anymore. It just means our role is changing, and the IT department can become a source of advice. You know, help me understand security, scalability, interconnectivity. Help me understand risk. The IT department should be advising parts of the organisation there so that they can build their own IT capability. Service management is becoming service aggregation, it's supplier management, it's advice, it's relationship management. So it moves beyond the technical skill set, and even, you know, the old service management skill set, some of the availability, capacity, service level agreements, that's shifted as well. So the question here, what needs to change? The structure of the organisation needs to change. How we think about IT needs to change. And if we are not able to make that mental shift, we will always be running up against this block of, well, we wanted to do it, but IT said no. And that will continue to create problems for value realisation and for our ability to actually deliver on our strategic goals.
Yes, completely agree. I think we're kind of almost circling back to this adage that IT these days is just the backbone of everything that happens. I think there's this quote out there that if you're a bank these days, you're not a financial institution with an IT function, you're an IT institution with a financial function, which I think kind of underscores that nicely. But let's move on to the next question, because this one is potentially going to be quite controversial. And this one is going back to the frameworks themselves. So we mentioned frameworks and kind of, you know, having this plethora of frameworks to choose from, having to implement them, having to integrate them together. whilst at the same time keeping that value first mindset, especially when using something like ITIL 4 or DevOps. So we have this range of ever-changing frameworks for operations and service. Do you think they add value? And do you think moving specifically to ITIL 4, which is kind of hot off the press, will provide us with a sufficient benefit to continue reinvest in training and in change? Why don't we start with Lorraine? What do you think about that?
I was just going to say, do you want me to jump in there? I think they do work, but only because the frameworks, they're not set in stone. So you actually tailor that framework for how you're wanting to use them within your business. And the reason I think they work is because they give everyone the same, there's a bigger understanding. I'll give you an example. I worked in an organisation where I was the only person that was ITIL qualified, and we made it part of our strategy to get everyone in the IT department. This was quite a big IT department. There's about 130 people to do foundation IT. And it was remarkable. For the first time, we were all speaking the same language. We were talking about incidents, requests, two-stage call closure. Before, if I had spoken to anyone like that, they wouldn't have understood exactly what it all meant and what it meant in the flow. So for me, that had a real benefit. But there is other people that I've known that said, oh, we can't do that because ITIL says this, and they use it to keep things firmly in place, and they don't use it. I always say it's like having a pencil mark outside. You could go out and in that, you move out and in, rub little bits out. But really, it just gives you that framework, some sort of guidance of a framework to build on. And within the service delivery and within Capita Consulting for the support delivery, we use some of Agile, we use some of ITIL, and we use some of the Service Desk Institute certification process, because I find that we bring different bits in from each of these frameworks for different areas, you know, within the whole support service. So in ITIL, we're using the incident, the request, and the change management process. For Agile, we're having our daily stand-up meetings, we're communicating regularly, we have a daily CAB, you know, so we're doing that. And with the Service Desk Institute framework, what I do is I use the 9 concepts to make sure that everything is filed away. We've got this SharePoint site that is based on that, so everyone knows where to go, everyone knows what we're doing. But of course, there's movement out with that as well. You know, we could pop in and out of other things. But for me, I really believe it's the mindset that you bring to the frameworks and how you use them that makes them work for you.
Yep, that makes sense. So I think, well, it's a bit of a success story, but underscored by sort of intelligently applying those frameworks where they belong. Jonathan, agree or disagree?
Well, I agree with what Lorraine's saying. It is all about understanding what to use, where to use it, and when to use it, and ultimately when not. And anybody that follows me online knows I'm not exactly the pro camp for ITIL. I see very little real change in ITIL. It's really just, you know, iterations moving forward. And in fairness to them, you know, it'd be very, very difficult to turn around and say, oh, actually, let's reinvent it. It's a very challenging thing to do when you've got 30 years of people learning it. However, I do think that the onus is on the vendor or the custodian, if you like, to clearly identify where is best to be used. What paradigm does this come from? What situation is this best used for? And there's still quite an approach of silver bullet. So basically you can use ITIL everywhere and anywhere. And we know that that's just simply not true. There are places it doesn't work. ITIL is designed around a paradigm of separate customers. If you look at any of the visualizations, you always see that service provider is separate to customer. And this comes back to what Lorraine and Claire were saying. We've realized that that simply isn't the case anymore. More and more organizations are talking about ecosystems, complex networks, where everybody's kind of being brought together in order to serve a common purpose. And I think traditional thinking around service management does indeed, to come back to Claire's point, need to change. That whole idea, that concept that we have needs to move on. ITIL was designed over 30 years ago to the predominant models at that time. Very industrialized thinking, very predictable processes, repetitive tasks, where you can put them in order. A, B, C, and D happens every time. How do we do more of A, B, C, and D in less time? How do we make it more efficient and effective? And we've kind of gone overboard on it to the point where, you know, people are just in production lines. So we've stopped innovative thinking, and it makes it very, very difficult to change rapidly and actually deliver value in what is a very unpredictable world. Certainly just now with the whole COVID situation, you know, everybody had a business continuity document. How many of them covered this? Very few, I would imagine. So now we need more than just a document that you send around everybody and they say, yes, I read it. We need a capability to be able to shift our workforce out into remote working if we need to, bring them in if we need to. All the technology is there. We've had it for a long time, and people have been kind of dabbling around with it, but trying to go through these long-winded and heavyweight processes, or practices, as we should now say, and it slowed everything down. And then COVID came along and everybody's like, I don't care, get everything working, buy it. If we need it, get it.
Yep. No, that absolutely makes sense. And I think it also leads us to the next question, which kind of builds on the theme. But you mentioned the ITIL 4, Jonathan, and how it hasn't changed much. And I guess ITIL 4's response would be that it actually has, because they've integrated all of this, you know, DevOps value-driven thinking into it, as opposed to the previous version, which was a little bit more prescriptive.
Yeah, which all come from the same paradigm. So it's the same things, just different takes of the same coin. There's no real difference. It still has the same concept, the same paradigm at its center. Yeah. It's just basically integrating with other similar ideas.
Yeah, I think there's no argument on that front, but I think it would be useful to maybe dig a little bit deeper into that and ask, you know, how do you think these lean, agile, and DevOps practices apply to ops and to service delivery these days? Why don't we start with Claire on that one?
This question encapsulates a problem that a lot of organisations have been experiencing for the past few years, which is about bottlenecks and silos of different practices within an organisation. So one company that I worked with was talking about the fact that they had a team of agile developers, and they also had a service management team who were doing problem management. And what they found was that there was duplication between the known error database and the backlog, but the teams were looking at different repositories, they were applying different prioritization techniques, and this was creating real friction within the organisation. Another example that I came across was an organisation where they had, again, agile practices in software development, but those teams were hitting roadblocks when it came to budget allocation, because the organisation's financial management was very much built around, you know, we want a big business case, we want complete certainty of the end product, we're only handing out money once a year, and we want you to be able to tell us exactly what you need. So as these different techniques have come into organisations, that's then created new problems. So having agile software development might be delivering you some benefits within your development teams, but it's then at the same time creating problems somewhere else. And quite often those results are felt in ops and service delivery. So what we need to do as an organisation is understand all of our different ways of working and start to try and mesh these together. So I was the chief architect for something called Verism, which is the service management approach for the digital age. And what Verism does is rather than saying, you know, we're an ITIL shop or we're a DevOps house, it says, we know there's lots of different ways of working within an organisation, within IT and outside of IT. How do we understand all of these? And how do we get them to work together? So it uses a visual tool called the management mesh, which allows you to map them all. You can see where you've got redundancies, you can see where you've got overlaps, you can see where you've got actually things just clashing together. And it gives you that kind of high level view of everything that's happening, because these are all giving us benefits. You know, Agile provides benefits, DevOps provides benefits, but there was a really silly conversation I got involved in on Twitter yesterday, and it was coming out the ITSM UK conference saying that you know, that DevOps needs to be integrated into our other teams, and you think, well, DevOps arose to try and get Dev and Ops working together. So now are we talking about integrating DevOps teams into Dev and Ops, and then we get DevSecOps, and then you've got Biz DevSecOps. So we need to look across the organization. We need to understand there's lots of things that are different, that are happening, but we ultimately need to understand where are the handoffs, you know, where are things different. Agile is being applied right across the organization now. And a lot of the things that come from DevOps and Agile, you know, focus on feedback, experimentation and learning, absolutely have an application, but it still needs to fit in with the things that already exist within our organization.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Lorraine, you were laughing there. Do you have anything to add from your side?
Yeah. What we found is with Agile, we understand it in the business, but the clients don't necessarily understand it themselves. You know, so you've got that barrier as well. But what I try to do, because I'm not doing this rapid development, I just try to pick up the bits that I can apply to service delivery. You know, and it's using the bits like Claire was saying, you know, and it's a communication, it's a feedback, it's a collaboration. And where we use our DevOps, you know, it's doing automatic monitoring, so we'll be much more proactive in our support. We're doing health checks, you know, so if an environment is in trouble, the next one spins up, there's no outage to the client. We're doing pipeline deployments, you know, just what I was saying earlier in that daily stand-ups, you know, we have a daily cab as well, so we're trying to put things through. But I do think that what I found is Agile, within the business, Agile was the new buzz thing in IT. Well, it's not the new buzz thing, it's been there for a while, but it's now become really quite a higher profile, but a lot of the clients don't understand it. So we're trying to go out and we're trying to impose this, well, we'll do this rapid release, you know, we'll do your sprints, and the clients are going, what? No, I want waterfall. I want to know exactly, you know, when I'm getting your milestones and things. So I think for me, I take the little bits out that I can and apply it to the operations and the service delivery. But I think there's a much bigger thing that we need to do within organisations to make them realise that we need to educate our clients, some of our clients, on that as well.
Yes, that's a very good point. I think there's much more discussion to be had on this front, but I'll move on to the next question, because we have 2 questions left for the panel and 15 minutes to go. So the next question is around automation. So we're delving back into the tools and into how they work for our users. And from our experience, automation can be very challenging to implement, to actually truly establish the benefits. Would you be able to share with us your experiences of challenges in implementing automations, and how you reap rewards whilst you're tackling things like, you know, disparity of standards, security, ongoing support and maintenance, etc.? Why don't we switch back to Jonathan for this one?
Sure. I think it's a really interesting question, because what we're seeing is a lot of automation, especially of repetitive tasks and work. And we're seeing things like the typical things that we do in IT becoming more kind of knowledge work rather than just those traditional repetitive tasks. The challenge that comes with automation is if you automate a bad process, you just get bad things faster. It really, again, it's all about thinking about what you're doing. And, you know, I have a different definition, or I use a definition for innovation versus improvement. Improvement is doing what you currently do better. And innovation is making those things irrelevant. So it's finding entirely different ways of doing things. So if you find a way to improve what you've got, that's fine. But if you look at a more holistic approach to this, when we're talking about the introduction of modern technologies, software that's self-healing, self-configuring, all these different kind of really smart solutions that are coming into the marketplace now, you can very quickly see that a lot of what we've done and spend huge amounts of time on traditionally, we've wrapped processes around and practices and documentation and all sorts of things, really are no longer relevant. So one of the main challenges is look at what you're actually trying to do. Look more holistically at what you're trying to achieve, what is required from your organization by your clients in order to be able to achieve what they want. And I think just to add into that, it's also remembering that the client doesn't necessarily know. We have a lot of kind of, being customer led, and, we want to understand what our customer wants. Of course, that's a given. But what a customer really wants and values is things that they didn't know they need yet. That's why they want the service provider to be able to give them those new experiences. And when we start to look at that and understand it a bit better, I think that's when we get the best from automation. Once you know what that is, what you're trying to actually do and how to do it, and it works, then automate it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Any thoughts from Lorraine or Claire on this one?
No, I completely agree with what Jonathan's saying. You need to really know. If you just implement bad automation, you just get bad results quicker. You really need to understand it, know what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've seen developing recently, which is a way to tackle these challenges, is accountability for automation. Who's responsible for it in your organization at the moment? And I have seen people talking about automation engineer as a job title, which it's not going to fit within every organization, but I love that concept, and it is almost a continual improvement concept for me. But if nobody's responsible for it, we will just keep doing the same things over and over again and complaining and chuntering about it as we go. So having a point of accountability, I think, is an important step.
Absolutely. I think we've had a sort of similar theme developing here around the automation as we had around frameworks, which is a holistic view of it all. Okay, thank you very much for that. I think we're almost due for our last question, so let's switch to that now, and let's just open that up to the entire panel. It's around people and culture, so bringing it back to the point that we started on, which is that all revolves around people, and especially enabling them and empowering them to perform well and innovate, including things like skills development. So in our experience, this sort of change always impacts on culture and behavior. So bringing in ITIL, DevOps, Agile, what have you. How do you think, perhaps using our digital tool sets or perhaps using other things, can we improve our culture whilst we keep up with this pace of rapidly developing new skills and services? Why don't we bring this to Claire first?
This is an interesting question because it gets to the heart of the team and the people, and it's interesting through most of this panel that we have come back to the people and the cultural elements. But I've been working in a virtual team for more than 10 years now. We span multiple countries. We have hit many of the challenges that come with making a change in a virtual team specifically. And a lot of what we've done has been around the use of digital tool sets. And a lot of that has been about supporting communication and collaboration, because when my business first started, we were 2 people. So we could email each other and we could chat to each other. And then when we became 3 people, email was still okay, but we saw a lot of Skype in at that point because people needed that slightly more instant chat. And our knowledge management was an absolute mess, I'll be honest. So at that point, Dropbox came in as well, and that gave us better configuration management. As the team grew again, email, Skype, they weren't doing it anymore. So we brought in Slack, and Slack has really, really helped to improve transparency of how we work. It's also ticked that box for having banter, Lorraine, because we've got the silly channel in Slack, which normally explodes on a Friday afternoon, which is, you know, that's fantastic. We were struggling to manage complex projects across the team. So at that point, Trello came in as well, and we were using Trello boards to manage projects and assign work and track the flow of work. So as things change, how you work changes, and the tools that are appropriate to support that will change as well. So it's a continual evolution. And again, to a certain extent, I think there is a management responsibility here to continually monitor the team. Because another thing that we did, which isn't tech-based, is we realised as the team grew, we weren't talking to each other enough. So we brought in regular team meetings, and we use Microsoft Teams for that, but that's to allow us to hear each other's voices, and very occasionally we get to see each other's faces as well. But it really is about monitoring the team, bringing in the technology that's going to support the team. However, none of that works if the team doesn't know what it's supposed to be doing. So above all of that, they're all the how, but the ultimate thing is the what and the why. Because if the team understands where it's going and what it's meant to do, a lot of this stuff falls into place naturally anyway. So, you know, understanding the purpose and then bringing in the tools that are going to support the communication, the collaboration, the transparency, and monitoring the effectiveness of those as the team evolves.
Yep, definitely. I really like that point you made at the beginning about retaining your knowledge, both knowledge and configuration management, and kind of keeping the wisdom that the team has accumulated over time across those different, often disparate platforms and tools. Why don't we have Jonathan on this next?
Sure. I think one of the kind of key things, especially around skills development, is that things are developing and changing so rapidly now that we don't necessarily know what skills we're going to need. The courses aren't yet available because we haven't got there yet. So I think it's very challenging to clearly define, you know, and just analyze, okay, what skills, where's the gaps? Things are moving very, very quickly in that sense. So I think business agility is, of course, very, very important. My own example here is where we have the kind of different silos using different tool sets. We've got, you know, one team using Salesforce to manage incidents, and another using different parts of Jira from a more software development perspective. Getting everybody onto the same tool set is a good way to help understand where you currently are and align things, but it's looking at categorizations, prioritizations, workflows, the different departments and how they use the data that they're going to be given. If you can set the guidelines and if you can set the high level workflows, then I think that gives that kind of shared purpose. They know where we're going, know where the organization's going, and really to cover what Claire's already said, once you have all that done, bring in the technology that's going to support people, make their lives easier. But you need to really understand how people work and what's required first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going back to the point that we made earlier about kind of thinking from the process first and bringing in the tools to support that process rather than the other way around. Thanks very much for everyone's input. I think just checking the time now for timekeeping, we're a couple of minutes towards the end now. So I think it might make sense if we just close off the panel discussion and have a quick look at the Q&A questions that have come in. So I'll just very quickly progress through what we have. We already have 2 questions that have been answered by the panelists throughout the discussion, so thanks very much for that. But there is one left open, so I'll just read it for everyone's benefit. So we had a few different views on improving team collaboration, and our attendee is wondering what the path has been so far. So does it involve multiple people for various roles, or a team-wide conversation, or is it a mix of trials and errors until you found the best approach? Do we have anyone on the panel who'd like to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I can share again the perspective from my organisation, which is a startup that has grown, because initially it was very much about everybody having an element of the same role. So my role might be, you know, finance, HR, business development, marketing. As the company's grown, we've then moved to having people who have specific roles. We have somebody doing business development, somebody doing customer services, somebody doing marketing. And at that point, it has become much more about the conversation. So we all need to know what's going on. We all need to know what everybody else is doing and how it all knits together. But for us, it has been a move away from everybody being able to do everybody's job to people who are much more specialised and focused, but with much more emphasis than needed on the knowledge sharing.
Yep, that absolutely makes sense. Would anyone like to add anything to that, Lorraine?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, and within my team, I work with the consultants when there's a new opportunity come in. So I get my area involved right away, so then I can start tailoring what the support is going to be there. Then I take that back into the team and we discuss it, what that will involve with DevOps, what will involve the developers and the QAs, and what will involve for the service desk. So it's just, it's having, and everyone's got their specialised area, but we all keep each other, when we meet every day, we don't just discuss support tickets and things, we discuss what this new project will mean, where we're sitting within the organisation, how we're going to do that. And I really do think it's sitting down regularly, having these conversations, and everybody having their role within that, and that's when you bring in that collaboration.
Yep, absolutely agree. I think we're almost out of time, so I think we might need to wrap up there. But thanks very much, everyone, for joining. Thank you to our panelists for making the time to join us today. For our attendees, a video of this, a recording video of this will be sent to you after the webinar. And just to mention as well, I think I said at the beginning that this was the last event in the series, but actually it isn't. So we have at least one more to look forward to, and we will be in touch with more details down the line. So thanks very much again, everyone. I think that's it for today.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
thanks so much.
Thanks all.
Have a good day.
Bye. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Very much so. Thanks again.